Ladies and gentlemen, we do thank you very much for your attention, and now we invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the
Welcome to our top travel destinations. I am your host, Kevin Flanagan. I have been editor of the weekly travel news column in the Sunday Independent and the Fine Wine and Food Guide, and I am here to use my decades of experience to help you know exactly where to stay, eat, drink, shop, and explore when visiting the world's top travel destinations. So sit back and enjoy the wonders of travel as we take off on our magical journey together. Welcome to our top travel destinations, and I am again so delighted to have Paul O'Conghaile, who has been a guest on the show before. One question that I often get asked, and I'm going to ask it to Paul as well, is where would you go? Where would you go somewhere that I've never been before that's going to give me memories? And maybe it's going to require a little bit more time invested or money invested, but this is something that's going to be precious. I'll kick off. This is my answer. I would certainly recommend you go to Cambodia. And I would do two places. Arrive into Phnom Penh and go to the killing fields. This sounds grim, but it's not. You go to the Genocide Memorial, which is a 20-minute taxi drive outside of the capital. You will see what man does to man there. It's so shocking. You go back into Phnom Penh and you actually go to a place called S21, which is a torture chamber and is the most extraordinary place. Now, then get on a plane or take a coach up to Siem Reap, which is in the north of the Cambodian jungle, and you will then have the exact opposite experience. You will go to heaven. You've been in hell, and now you go to heaven. And this is the Temple of Angkor Wat. And the first time I went there, I had no idea. I was with my pal Diamond, and I had no idea what Angkor Wat was. And I was ringing a friend, and he said, this is the most holy place on earth. And you actually get to see something that was lost in the jungle, the Cambodian jungle. It was discovered by a sort of a Indiana Jones type French archaeologist. Laura Croft Tomb Raider was shot there, which put it on the map, maybe for the wrong reasons. But you can meet the Buddha. You climb up to the top of this structure, and it is the most extraordinary experience I've ever had for travel, and it was a privilege. So that's my one. Now, Paul.
How do I follow that? With difficulty.
Well,
as you were speaking, I was thinking, if we're talking about Asia, I would definitely go to Japan once in my lifetime. I've been a couple of times. And
you have it over me there because that's one of my next big destinations. So I'm jealous.
It's very accessible, very westernized in some respects in that it's very easy to get around. You'll have no problem with your English. It's very safe. But also, the more I visited, the less I felt I knew about it. It's one of those intriguing places where you have this futuristic side with the high tech, with the cat cafes, with the amazing neon streetscapes, combining with the ancient temples and the sculpted gardens and these rigid hierarchies that are almost invisible in the society. You land in, you get this lost in translation moment where you're trying to get your head around it. Then you feel like you're oriented yourself. You know the sushi, you've tasted this, you've had your bento box, you've had your railway curry, you've been on the bullet train. Then you realise, hang on, I have just scratched the surface of this place. And I would recommend people go at least once for that reason and tour around and travel by train. Closer to home. Am I cheating by saying two?
Can I ask one question about Japan?
Yeah.
Did you go, since I saw Oppenheimer, I so want to go to Hiroshima and stand underneath.
I have made it around Hokkaido to Tokyo, to Kyoto, to Osaka, Nara, but I didn't make it down. I'm trying to recall exactly geographically where it is, but I didn't. I had it on for next time, and I wanted to go to Okinawa as well. That's what I mean. It's one of these destinations where you set out saying, I'll do it once and I'll do it in 2 weeks. You realise what a fallacy that is, because you instantly say, I should have left a month, and then you're instantly saying, I need to come back. But it's a big journey, longer to get there because the flights can't go over Russia currently, and it's not the cheapest, although the exchange rate is amongst the better ones I've seen over the years at the moment. You'll have to weigh all those things up as a visitor.
But there's something about it that even what you were saying there, it really catches the imagination.
Yeah, I've no doubt that I'll go back, and it does catch the imagination. And because a lot of it is about, part of it is on the surface level, the beauty, the way the society just functions, the high tech stuff you want to get razzle-dazzled by. But then there's the people, and there's the ancient traditions, and there's the sushi bar where the guy has been rolling the sushi and cooking his rice in the same way as that bar has been doing it for 100 years. The fact that it's an older society, all of that stuff is just, that level of intrigue starts to seep through the longer you stay. So I'm quite a curious traveller, and I like to experience a place through people. And that's one of the reasons I got into travel in the first place. So that's what I mean by the more I go, the less I feel I know about Japan.
Yes, yes. And the language, is it a barrier in Japan, or how do you negotiate that?
Yeah, definitely is a barrier. It's very alien. You'll find signposts in English, you'll find basic pidgin English. It's easy enough to get around because everything works and everything runs on time. And you're not like in a scrum to get on a train like you might be in some other destinations. So that's what I mean about it being easy to get around. You won't have to worry about having things stolen. And I had the stereotypical moment where a man followed me down the street to give me back my wallet that I'd left somewhere, all that stuff. But yeah, the language, and that's where almost your probing has to stop, because you can't get to know a place without getting to know its language and in part. So one way around that is to get a guide. And I've done that a few times in Japan, got local guides that speak both languages, and they get you into that second gear, and they give you a little bit extra to work with. Yes. In fact, I'd give that as a general tip.
Yeah, and I absolutely concur. Yeah. Going around Asia with my friend Diamond, who's a native speaker, he understands the culture. There's an osmosis because you have a friend. And usually the guides are so reasonable, particularly in Asia. Places like Cambodia, you'll pay, for a day you may pay €15. It's crazy not to engage and give something back to the local community.
Yeah, agreed. It's more Western prices in Japan, but you can do it on all sorts of levels. You can get a food tour, you can do a group tour, you can do a private tour, you can do it like a local, you can have it palace themed, whatever you may want. Yes. But they're very culturally so kind. And I remember the tour I did ended sitting in a little bar over our ramen or whatever it was we were having, and she had my notebook and was writing down her tips for what I should do next and handing me back my notebook.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so wonderful. And the best meal you had and the best drink you had in Japan?
Oh, gosh. Hard to narrow it down. Every type of food I could give you an answer for, but let's go with a bowl of ramen. Like the ramen is supposed to be eaten in something like 6 or 7 minutes before the noodles absorb too much of the broth. But the story behind that bowl is not only days old in terms of how long it took to prepare the broth and the recipes they took and the specialities of each bar, but generations old. And there are reasons why there are those noodles, and there are reasons why the broth has that smack to it, and there are reasons why it's this much hotter than the one down the road. Ramen, if ever there was a bowl that tells a story, that's it. In fact, you could do a whole ramen tour of Tokyo. I met a guy who lived there, and he was known as the Ramen King because that was his whole shtick. He just wrote about ramen.
That's amazing. That's actually amazing.
And you could say the same about sushi. That's what I mean about it being such an intriguing culture. The layers and layers. Ireland doesn't have a centuries-old food culture, so to speak. We're rediscovering, we're getting better at it. But when you go somewhere like this, you really realise what it means.
And very briefly, you wanted to share a second one. So you get a stab at your second.
Well, I'll give you a very brief answer. People often say to me, where would you go, all thing being equal, and you wanted a holiday? And my answer is I would go to a Greek island in September. And specifically the second half of September, because that is when the kids are back in school, the locals are winding down, they're wiping the sweat off their brow, the sea temperatures are still warm, the days are still long, and the prices are slightly lower, and you just feel like you're in Greece 20 years ago.
Any particular island?
In the Cyclades, Naxos, if you're interested in both the villages and the water and the resorts, plus an intriguing interior with mountains, with mountain towns, with hikes and so on. Maybe Paros. I'd steer clear of Mykonos and Santorini at this stage. And then one other one south of Corfu called Paxos. Oh. So there's a couple of options.
Wow. Because we've got a short haul and a long haul. And you have so whetted my appetite for Japan, Mike, and ramen. Isn't that the joy about travel? It's so wonderful to sit down with a fellow traveler who makes it, like myself, as a profession. And it's actually the joy it gives and the aliveness.
Yeah. Well said.
If you had to share one thing as to why someone would travel, what would it be if they were saying to you, well, because I know a lot of people with COVID, they don't want to travel, they got a bit older. What would you say to them?
Well, it depends where you're going. For your fly and flop, all well and good, take a break. I feel you have a gear that you access when you travel that you don't access when you're at home in your day-to-day life. It's about curiosity. It's about being alert to things. It's about being a captive audience, being open to new ideas, having time, not having to wash up. And whether that's the bowl of ramen or it's chatting to someone from Italy or Turkey or Norway that you don't know anything about, learning a little bit, opening your mind and coming home with a new perspective.
Yes, well said. Thank you so much.